Up next, we have a very dynamic panel discussion, which is going to be talking about how digital transformations should start with your customers. A quick introduction of all the panelists here. We have Eloise Boak. She is the head of customer experience, African Bank from South Africa. Mumbi Odame, head of CX and design, Rand Merchant Bank from South Africa. Brenda Zuma, customer service and operations manager, Superbellist from South Africa. Sean Edmiston, acting head of business banking and director of customer experience, ABSA Group. From Mauritius, we have Douglas Van Wyk, regional manager, Infobip from South Africa. Savi Trivedi, regional sales head, Freshworks from South Africa. We have Mike Hancock, who's the chairman, Circle of Excellence, Auckland, New Zealand, who's also the moderator for this panel. Welcome everyone to this panel discussion.
Thank you, Pooja. Hi, everybody.
Most welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Pooja.
Thank you, Pooja. Welcome, everybody.
Hi.
You now, Mike.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi.
Great. Well, it's lovely to see everybody here today, and welcome to everybody who's joining us for what I think will be a really stunning and very vast searching panel discussion today. We've got a number of people on here who have incredible experience both in Africa and overseas as well. So the world is changing very, very dynamically at the moment, and the last 18 months have made organizations, whether they be multinationals or small organizations, rethink the whole way that they look at customers. And so what we're going to do on the panel today is we're going to share some topics and we're going to have some discussions, and I'm going to facilitate that backwards and forwards between the different people. Doug, I'm going to start with you. So we've got Douglas Van Wyk here from Infobip, and let's start off by just telling us a little bit about what Infobip does, Douglas, and then we'll move on to my first question for you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mike. Thanks for starting with me. At school, I was always very last because of my surname, because it starts with V. So I'm very thrilled to be starting first this time. It's normally the bad ones where they want you to start first, but this is definitely not a bad one. Thank you. So Mike, Infobip is relatively a very young company. We are just starting 15 or just turning 15 years old, and the company has morphed from being what we used to call a pure communication platform as a service provider into now a software as a service provider, which I think is incredible because there's a lot of companies that are playing in our space that are still very much CPaaS players. And what do I mean by that? So we started off as an A2P provider, mainly an SMS. My previous managers went off across the globe. There was actually a joke going around that they lived in airplanes, literally, because they would hop from one airplane to the next. And the strategy was very clear from the onset that we always wanted the best quality connectivity at the best possible price. And a lot of that also involved us opening up offices across the globe. We're now sitting in about 66 offices across the globe. And most of those were for regulation. But we realized, but hang on, we've got an asset sitting in all these countries. Let's start building a sales force into these offices. So we started developing salespeople into these offices. Like a toddler started, coming out from behind our mother's skirt and saying, "Hey, world, here's Infobip. We are no longer playing in the background. We are now coming directly to enterprises." And today our business is very much still around communication. So we engage enterprises that have got any communication challenge, and whether that be on a messaging platform or whether that be anything else, even in a call center, we're now offering not just a choice of channels, we're also offering software that we're putting on top of the channel stack. And this is really positioning us now as a serious player in the market to be able to go to enterprises and listen to their concerns, listen to their challenges around communication, and then propose and help them solve these challenges. So we're still headquartered in a small little village, Vodjan, in Croatia, but we are fast moving into Silicon Valley in the States as well. And we also got our sights set on IPO either late next year or early 2024. So that's us. We are orange. We've got our logo is a target, and I think that's deliberate because we like to target challenges and take them out the way for our customers.
Douglas, I'm the chairman of 5 companies that we started them all, and we operate in over 50 countries around the world. And when I say that, that means that we've actually got people on the ground in those places, and we've got clients that we actually know in those places. They're not sort of faceless people that we have online and things like that. And I'm going to be a little bit sort of pushing back against the trend of customer service and the way in which customer experience happens. I'm going to give you an example because I think you're going to be able to pick up on this and really fly with it. My partner Landy and I have a fantastic cafe that we've gone to locally. In fact, we'd have so many business meetings there and personal meetings. I would say on average, we'd probably spend between 1,000 and 2,000 Rand a month at this cafe. And then what they did is we went in there one day about a year ago and they said, we don't have menus anymore. We now have a QR code and you have to go to a QR code. And I looked around the cafe and I realized that 90% of the people in that cafe were over 60 years old. I wasn't. But 90% of the people were over 60 years old. And they're all sitting there with their phones going like this and trying to work it out and everything like this. So I actually went to the owner and I said, you're destroying your business. I said, because you think that you're being savvy with all this technology that you're putting in, but actually what you're doing is you're really pissing off your customers in many respects. And I, for one, I don't want to sit there and have to pull out my phone and go through all this just to order. Oh, they said, oh, that's COVID compliant. I said, we'll put a blackboard up and we can all read off the blackboard. Now, I know, and I'm positioning that for you because I haven't been back since, and I've not taken any clients. And if anybody asked about it, I say, it's too hard to deal with. Don't go back there. Great cafe, wonderful food, everything, but their system's all wrong. You're all about humanizing the customer experience. And it seems that there's a lot of organizations out there that are getting too smart at this stage. And I say every strength taken to an extreme becomes a weakness. So share with the viewers today, what is your tips to humanize customer experience in this world where we're getting obsessed by digital and by new ways of doing things? We're all trying to one-up each other to do things those ways.
Yeah, Mark, I absolutely love that example because that's exactly it, right? Most companies are on this digital transformation bandwagon. They're starting teams and they're doing a whole bunch of stuff, but they forget one critical element that, even if you do employ or do pull in all these digital channels and all these fancy gadgets and stuff, if your processes, your existing processes, and I'll take this example of the restaurant or the coffee shop, if your processes are not feeding into these digital channels, then you've already missed the boat, because then you've got already a customer experience gap, right? So when we consult with customers, the very first thing we do is we say, what does your customer journeys look like right now? And does your customer journeys really need a digital channel or an AI bot or any other form of automation? It also, we've heard so many speakers today, yesterday and today, talk about if you're going to be doing anything around customer experience, it's got to start with the customer. The customer's got to be in the middle of it. I mean, we've just had Kim earlier talk about that as well, right? And that's where it's got to start. So when we consult with customers, we start with customer journeys. We actually ask them to show us what their customer journeys look like. If they don't have, that's also not a problem. We help them design customer journeys. And that's where the starting point is. If your customer journey then dictates what sort of elements or what sort of channels or what sort of digitization you need through that customer journey. But a customer journey is only as good as the data that is fueling it. So we also take a step back most of the times and we said, look, all of us are in the business of collecting customer information. All of us are also in the business of storing that customer information. And all of us are always trying to analyze and do ridiculous models with customer data, right? But if you're not putting that customer data to good use in your customer journeys, then your machine, my friend, is running out of fuel, or you're putting the wrong fuel into your machine. So that's where we started. We also say, keep it simple, right? Let's start very simple, because if you are going to embark on your customer experience strategy and you're going to try and do everything at the same time, you're also going to set yourself up for failure. So pick the low-hanging fruits, like this menu example, have a QR code for those customers that want to use the QR code, but there's other options, right, that are always in front of you. And although it might look very simple and very stupid to you, it's not. Until you've tested it and tried it, you won't know. So we always say, keep it simple. Let's start with the basics, because if you've got the basics, then you've got a foundation that you can build on.
Absolutely. Yeah, well said. No, I'm going to push across to you, Eloise, because it's time for African Bank to come in and give some wisdom here. And it's interesting what you say, Douglas, because I noticed a number of the speakers over the 2 days are actually clients of ours. And like Chantel Borta, who spoke this morning, I believe, and I didn't see her talk, although I'm talking to her after we get off the thing today, who really has a very human customer experience journey with everything. She's built a magnificent business of it. But Eloise, let's start a little bit by telling everybody just a little bit about you and about what you're doing at the moment for 30 seconds or more. And then I've got a question to lead off from where Douglas left off.
Thank you very much. I head up customer experience at African Bank. And for those of you who know this environment, you will know that African Bank traditionally was a credit provider and has evolved into a full retail bank. So now we are a financial services challenger brand, which comes with a massive set of opportunities, one of which is utilizing customer experience to be able to deliver really differentiated opportunities and products in the market. And that's really where my focus is. I have been driving, converting a pure sales organization into a customer-centric organization across every aspect of the business. And as we evolve our strategy, my focus now goes to how do we transform really fundamentally our products, our interactions across all our journeys, every touch point, allowing our experience that is so fundamentally human-based, empathy-based, into something that is a powerful differentiator for our customers and all customers in South Africa.
Well, I think the people that I've spoken to, Eloise, are actually really excited by the emergence of you as more of a retail with retail banking solutions, because people are looking for options now. And it's so interesting because you actually have the challenge now, a cultural challenge. I'm not talking culture in terms of races and genders or anything like that, but I'm talking culture in terms of an internal cultural challenge and an internal customer cultural challenge to shift that any way you want to. It's like when one of my friends got divorced and lost his house and everything like that a number of years ago, he said, oh, everything's terrible. I said, actually, you could look at it and say everything's great because you can reinvent yourself exactly as the next version of who and you want to be, whereas before you just had to be who you were. So I know the last time that we spoke that you were all about really empowering people via the digital mechanisms and marketplace. So tell us a little bit more about that, flowing on from what Douglas was saying before, because you have a real vision to empower people through these modologies. What is it?
Thank you, Mike. I think our drive is really founded on the fact that from a digital landscape, we have this open book. We as a business don't have legacy systems. We don't have any of those hindrances of the big banks. So we have implemented a truly omni-channel technology that allows us to engage with our customers no matter what platform in a singular, really seamless manner. It's very exciting. But then your organization needs to be able to support that. It's great that your technology does that. but how do we create a culture that allows every single component of that value chain to understand how they are also omni-channel? So we have to omni-channel our business internally as well. And that's our big culture shift. And that requires empowering people, not only with understanding about products and services and processes, but really we've spent a lot of time working on what are our standards, what are we promising our customers, and that it is ingrained into every single person's personal KRA. Your bonus, your level of remuneration is determined by how you are delivering for that customer. And that requires us to have very integrated internal technology, that our surveys are not just external customer-centric surveys, but also internal customer-centric surveys. Everything is integrated, processes, SLAs, so that we get this view around customer that says to us at any given time which environment is really servicing our customers and where are our gaps, and where we have opportunities to completely shift the needle. That has meant spending a lot of time with our HR teams, building the right training, but also integrating that into our systems. You know, for frontline people, it's a lot to remember. It's hard to be able to manage all products and all compliance. Anyone in financial service knows that's always very tricky. And as we refine our insights, where are we able to empower our people through our systems? So our ultimate goal is at the touch of a button when a customer calls us, as they currently can, and they do not need to ID and V themselves. If we know your number, you come straight through to a customer. I'm not asking you 20 other questions. And if I'm transferring you to another environment, you are not getting re-ID and V, which is already a major difference. But are we empowering our people to have the conversation with the customer where they're at? And the work we are doing is really striving to ensure that our people with our technology is so deeply integrated into our insights that I know that this customer has 2 complaints, is outstanding on a loan. I can tell you why you're calling before you're calling. I know what kind of mood you're in. So we are using AI and various other technologies then to help drive that understanding. It's very integrated in building a culture that allows us to engage with customers in a way that's more intuitive and certainly more personal, because that's the future of personalization, is those interactions with the customer at that goal face, not only just understanding in a technological offline environment. When I engage with you face to face, which is the majority of our customers in South Africa, will still want to either call or speak to us in a branch. How are we making that a personalized, really seamless experience?
Fantastic comments. I have so many places to go with what you've said there, but I think I'm going to move on because you mentioned something in your talk, and I'm going to go to Savvy now. And I'd have to say, Savvy, you know, we're always going to be nervous when we start asking questions to somebody whose name is Savvy, right? Because we know their answers are going to be very, very highly intelligent. Now, and also the fact that you have worked for Amazon, so you've got all the insiders, probably know about, Jeff Bezos's space plans and everything like that as well. But maybe tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, just to kick off, and then I've got a question. Yeah, on that one. Then I've got a question that comes from really what Eloise was saying.
Right. Thanks, Mike, and thanks for not spilling the beans with regards to my plans there. So basically, I work for Freshworks within the sales function in South Africa. And my job is to basically understand, what the customer needs are. And then as Freshworks, what we do is to basically understand the customer's needs and then give them solutions that can delight their own customers. As Eloise was saying, we have external customers for businesses as well as internal customers, right? So Freshworks, what it tries to do is, it has platforms across the various verticals and business units of various companies across sectors. And we try to give them a solution which, they can use to sort of serve the internal as well as external customers. So we have a broad spectrum of platforms, starting from, let's say, like a Fresh Service, which is an IT service management tool, to, let's say, a Fresh Desk, which is a customer service desk. So internal as well as external sort of applications of this product. So we launched, around 10 years back as a small company in Chennai. And I think most of you have seen in the news, last month, we had an IPO within the US where we were valued over 10 billion or so. So I think the company has gone leaps and bounds. And I think the key to that is to understand the sort of requirements that the customers have within this digital transformation space, so to say, and then sort of cater to those requirements and give them a sort of solution where, they can easily plug and play our, services and, delight their customers, whether internally or externally.
Absolutely. And good luck with your shares in the company too at 10 billion. You should be a happy boy. So let's talk about AI, because, that's the thing that Eloise mentioned that she's starting to really come to grips with, along with the people side, and they sit hand in hand. Right. But how do you manage AI integration with the expectation of customers, both internally and externally? Because I think it's, in some cases, it could be generational. In some cases, it could be cultural. In some cases, it could be sheer likes and dislike. I mean, I can't tell you how many, millennials I've talked to recently that say they're getting off all social media and they don't want to have anything to do with technology. So you've got this whole AI slant that I know that you're passionate about, but the customer integration side of that is really, really important. What comments do you have on that?
Right, Mike, thanks for the question. It's a very interesting subject because, as you might have seen over the past 10 years or so, things are moving digital, and more so in the past, let's say 1 year or 1.5 years of the pandemic. Things are moving online, and all the customers and also most of the businesses are now online. So like, how do you provide that differentiated experience and a customized experience to the customer? Of course, a lot of services and a lot of businesses have bots abilities to interact with the customers on an initial basis. Also, a lot of businesses have started using AI. I don't deny that, customer experience, comes from giving the customer a customized sort of experience right from the beginning when it comes to, the processes and, having your customer within your business processes across, the whole sales cycle, let's say. I also want to, emphasize that, as long as you have a good sort of people, process, and technology approach, you can always, enable your customers to reach out to you through various sources. And digital technology is going to just evolve, and AI is just going to evolve and, sort of get used within those spaces. Let's say, for example, you have a behavior-based segmentation of a customer through, the persona, that collecting the data of the customer. And then based on those information, you can sort of come up with a 360-degree view of the customer and, cater to their demands better. So if I'm answering your question, Mike, basically what I'm trying to say is that once you can sort of get that, basic information and, have that basic experience covered with regards to interacting with the customers, AI and other tools can, on top of that, sort of help you emphasize the customer experience and, provide additional value. So it need not be that AI comes to play right at the beginning of the conversation itself. So it could be a cross-selling sort of approach as well. AI can come into play where, for example, I have a good example here. So within India, there's a state called Telangana. And basically what they have done during the COVID pandemic is, released bots to, interact with customers, or rather patients who are worried, that they might have COVID. So it's like a self-service bot wherein a person can, assess themselves through the bot itself, and sort of that makes the lives of, those people who are, worried about their health very easy, as well as the, the health department of the state. So this is something that, can be used across various platforms and in different capacities. But of course, we need to be very of how to use it and when to use it and where to use it is the basic differentiation between it being a winning product or not a very successful product.
I think you bring up a really good point there, which is the how, where, and when to use it. And I mean, I saw an interview with Elon Musk recently, and I wrote about this in my book Conscious Leadership when I was studying AI. And mostly what's on the marketplace that everybody's using is not AI; it's augmented intelligence. So it's actually based off data that you have that you manipulate in some way. But Elon's really against AI. Specifically. So I think we all have a duty of care. And I think that, as we progress this, and, a lot of the people we've got work on our panel today work for very big organizations, and they hold a lot of data. I used to run sales and marketing for an insurance company in my corporate life. So, I know how much data that we had on all of our customers. So there is this how, where, and when type of thing do we use it. So I'm glad you brought that up. Mumbi, I'm coming to you, Miss R or Mrs. RMB now. So lovely to have you on the call today. Just tell everybody a little bit about what you're doing with RMB.
Great, thanks, Mike. Glad to be here, and thanks to CEM as well for giving me the opportunity. So I look after client experience and design at RMB. Basically, my role is to implement the experience management capability in the bank. And it's an interesting role, and I define it that way because RMB is a high-touch business. We look after large corporate and institutional clients, which means we have a very face-to-face organization. We are part of the FirstRand group, and so those in South Africa will know FNB has been at the forefront of digital for a long time. So while RMB may not be very loud about it from a digital perspective, it is part of the strategy from a whole FirstRand group perspective. But then it's an issue of how do you use digital in a very high-touch business without losing that element, because that's what our clients are looking for. And so, yes, I think let me stop there in terms of the introduction before I go into
No, that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because at the moment, with Eloise and Douglas and Savvy, we've talked quite a bit about, the end user. And I guess I sort of positioned that with my cafe issues, right? I have to find a new cafe to go to now. But really your focus is really the utilization of different digital tools in the business to business arena. And that's something I know that you're very passionate about. So can you give us your views on the future in the next, say, 1 to 3 years? Because I don't think we can look any further than that whatsoever, on what some of the revelations are in the business to business field. And they might be things that you're doing or things that you've studied in the marketplace and around the world.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest ones actually is what COVID has brought about, the full digitization of all sorts of spheres of life for everybody. And I think from a B2B world, it's easy to say, oh no, our clients want to be face-to-face. You have to go see the CEO and have a conversation with him, wine and dine them. That's fantastic. But what COVID has done is actually moved everyone digital. And there are elements of that relationship that are going to have to move digital. And that's what we've had to wrestle with. So we've had to wrestle with, as we are going digital, how will it work in our very high-touch world? How do you incorporate that into a very face-to-face environment in one end? What are the things clients actually want to do digitally because they want them first, they want them efficient, they want them frictionless, versus where do we still need to maintain that conversational element from a face-to-face perspective or person-to-person perspective. So some of the things we've implemented, for example, is from a client experience perspective, we always talk about the journey map and how to bring it to life. And I know Steve from BP Group was talking about it yesterday, and they're going to be talking about it in the panel. But one of the things we've had to do is walk away from the traditional way of doing client experience or user experience and look at what tools do we need to actually make this real in our world, in a B2B world. And so we've merged client experience tools with service design, with user experience and process and culture, and amalgamate all these different aspects of looking at client and enabling the business to serve the client in order to surface the digital elements, surface the person-to-person elements, and still deal with the culture of how we use them in the business. So I think those are some of the things that will have to come to the fore, especially for us as client experience practitioners. We have to start thinking of how we move from the traditional and what are the skills and the tools we're going to need for the future, and especially from a B2B world. I think client experience is very established in the retail world or B2C world. And I think from a B2B world, we are still finding our feet, and we really do battle. We like to use case studies, and we really do battle to get case studies. So anyone who is out there with case studies would be very happy to hear from them.
Well, I was going to ask you this question. I was thinking I was probably going to put it in a fun way, but let me just ask it straight. Who's your guru in the B2B? In other words, who do you think in your experience globally, let's go global, is really doing B2B customer experience well at the moment, and why?
Wow, that's an interesting one, Mike, because we've really battled. I think you find elements of client experience that are done well in different organizations. And I'm going to struggle now to pick up on examples, but you find an organization that does very well in terms of measuring the pulse of their clients and how they deal with their clients. If I think of an organization like BMW and what they do in terms of their cars and how they service their own dealerships, because they obviously don't go directly into the market. They go through dealerships, and how they work with their dealerships to service their end client. You almost can't tell the difference between the dealership and BMW itself, and how they've worked that out. So I think you find elements of design, you find elements of measurement, you find elements of data and the usage of data in different organizations. I think we have struggled to find a holistic, an organization that is doing well holistically in the B2B world. And it's not necessarily that they're not there. I think actually it's more that the case studies are not enough in the market to enable us to see that.
Yeah, and I think you've opened a great Pandora's box there, because the simple fact that you can't go, boom, oh, it's this company and they do this and this and this is indicative of the state of the world at the moment, and indicative of why this event is so relevant at the moment. Yeah. So I think that's fine. Interesting, you mentioned BMW. I'm a BMW driver, and there's some interesting things that go in there. We bought a new car this year, so we had the whole customer experience through that, which is something we can talk about offline sometime. So I'm going to go to Sean now. Sean, you're the person everybody in Santon is the most jealous of in this call, because you live in Mauritius, right? So
yep.
They're about as far from the beach as they could be, and you've got it all to yourself. So welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing at ABSA, and then I'll shoot my question at you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and to all the other panelists, thanks for the opportunity to be part of the discussion. I think, from where I am, we made a big move as a family to Mauritius. The opportunity came to come and look at ABSA here and take a stab at the customer experience business, which is really interesting in a market like Mauritius, given the complexity of its nature from a financial institution perspective, its position globally from a financial flow of funds, as well as let's say the maturity of the banking industry, and in many instances it is very mature, and in others it's not so much. So the opportunity to come here and do some frontier-based stuff was huge for me, and obviously, because my office is on the beach under a palm tree, adds a massive amount of benefit to my overall state of consciousness. But also there's some really cool stuff happening here. So we've launched a humanoid banker in Mauritius. So this is that integration of augmented intelligence, artificial intelligence, and that how you make a digital experience more human. And we've got Abby, who is our humanoid banker, and I think the interesting piece about it has been how the market has responded to it, and what it has opened for us to be able to do in a wider context.
Yeah, fantastic. And Well, that's good. Good luck with Abby. Our motto. I'm actually sitting in our office at the moment. It's the Octopus House, and it's Ocky the Octopus. So if he's looking for a girlfriend, I'll send him Abby's way. That's for sure. Now, Sean, you said something profound the last time I was speaking to you, and you said digital's not the solution; it's the enabler.
Yes.
And I think that so many of us make the mistake, and I can fall into this as well, of looking at the digital solution. So tell us more about that and what the differentiators are in your mind and how you approach that.
Yeah, and Mike, I think the world was thrust into this drive for digitization in early stages of last year, and everybody had to be digital. And the immediate response was for everybody to digitize their front end. And everything went online application, online KYC, digital ID and V. Everything went digital, and there was this race to be paperless in every facet and every corner of the world. But in that race, we forgot about what happens behind the digital facade. And in many instances, what businesses have done is all they've done is created a bottleneck in the back end where the processing element in the middle office, back office space hasn't been digitized. You don't have that STP environment. You don't have sufficient resource capacity to handle the volume of stuff that is essentially still manual. And Eloise mentioned earlier about the legacy systems that African Bank doesn't have. From a large banking perspective, we do sit with these legacy systems. We do sit with processes out there, and many businesses sit with the same space, that it's not just a click of a button. You still need a warm body to either push a button, look at a document, move a document in one form or another to another place. And that is where the enablement of technology needs to be almost prioritized, as when we think about our customer and we think about moving our decision-making process or that self-service environment closer to the customer, it must be a full value chain move as opposed to just the entry piece. Because if we do that, all we're doing is plugging a lot of pipes into one funnel, and you just never clear the funnel. And there's nothing worse than making your customer wait.
That's that's a quote. So write that one down, folks. There's nothing worse than making your customer wait. Very pedantic in that. Very well said, I would say. I noticed that as you were speaking, also Eloise is drinking a gin and tonic by the looks of it, so she's pretty relaxed with no legacy systems there for sure. Sean, I'm going to come back to you, but I want to go to Brenda now, and welcome, Brenda. You're the lucky last, but by no means the least to be introduced on the panel. After we go through this series, I'm going to throw a few open questions at the group. Brenda, tell us a little bit about what you're doing at the moment, and then I want to pick up something that you said the last time we spoke.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. To the rest of the panelists, thank you very much for sharing your insights. You had me nodding here. I started nodding internally because I didn't want to seem like I was over enthusiastic, but a little background about me. I look after superbalist.com, which is an online fashion retail store. We are one of 3 companies sitting under the Take A Lot group. What I am responsible for at the moment is the customer experience portion of the business. I look after customer service across 3 different platforms. And then I'm also responsible for the operations piece, where we are looking at fulfillment and returns. what has become quite interesting for us over the last 2 years is that obviously we've seen a whole lot more people migrating to online shopping, where customers usually felt the need to go into a store to touch, to feel, to try on. The lockdown forced them into a platform where they would now have to go online to purchase something. And for me, my philosophy as far as customer experience is concerned is customer obsession starts internally, then permeates externally. So my group of employees, my leaders, I view them as my customer, and how I treat them is essentially how I expect them to be able to treat our external customers. And what I have found to be quite interesting and quite challenging during these times has obviously been how do we convert the online skeptics who want instant gratification and want a seamless process from when they click check out to receiving their order, and how do we make sure that that entire journey is seamless? And while we try to make it as self-service as possible, how do we make sure that the individual touch points work hand in hand by making sure the journey is efficient?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, I've bought a few things off Take a Lot, not from your company specifically, but one of the things we notice with buying now online is it's almost like a lottery if it's going to arrive or not. So yeah, it's not the process there. It's something seems to break down in the transportation area. I can't tell you how many things we're waiting on that we've bought online. When we last spoke, you were really passionate about getting the team to work effectively remotely, because, you know, let's face it, in the short term, there's companies all around the world looking to rebuild their offices, turn them into something else. You know, we've got a lot of clients in the education field and they're rejigging their education spaces. So, you know, quite likely your team could be anywhere around the country really, and living in their lounge room and doing that work. And I know you're passionate about this. So tell us a little bit about the challenge and about the solution to really keeping people motivated to provide great customer service and a great customer experience, and how you as a leader provide a great experience for your customers or your team.
Good question, Mike. So that has definitely been one of our most challenging aspects since the lockdown, because what we found is that with the lockdown coming into play, our customer base grew quite significantly, where I would have been able to run a really lean operation with a maximum of 30 people. I found the influx of volume meant I needed to look at different ways to make sure that I'm not overwhelming my current employee base, by making sure that I start understanding and unpacking where their strengths and development areas sit, so that I can effectively assign them to the right contact type. Earlier, you spoke to us about the fact that you were quite challenged by the fact that you now needed to use a QR code to access a menu. And that's something we've come across as well at Superblist. While we might have thought that we want to expose or highlight social media as our go-to platform to get a quicker response, we needed to understand that there are some of our newer customers who have come on board during the lockdown who are not as tech savvy, and how do we make sure that they don't get left behind? So some of the work that I've done is actually unpacking our contacts that come into my contact center, because in as much as it becomes quite tempting to just churn them out as they come in, we also need to take a step back and understand what are our customers actually telling us. If most of my contact types are going to speak to the fact that the return process is quite difficult, or it's going to speak to the fact that we are not shooting garments to be a true reflection of what they're getting, then we need to understand how do we deal with all of the different aspects within the business to come together and work on a single roadmap that is going to address all of the areas of development. As far as my staffing is concerned, what I found to be quite challenging is the coaching aspect, the training and onboarding of new people who are going to join the business, because what often happens is that people join the business, we're able to take them through the journey of onboarding. We're able to teach them processes. And in an environment where you are teaching or training somebody face to face, you are actually able to gauge their understanding or whether or not they are moving on the same wavelength as the rest of the population. And that is where we needed to really start unpacking it. So it meant I needed to do a lot more work with our HR team to understand how do we identify the right type of person who's going to be suitable to handle my social media contact. How am I going to identify the right person who's going to be suitable to handle my email funnel as well as my telephone funnel? Because the last thing we want to do as a business is have people that are going to be overwhelmed at home, undertrained, underdeveloped, and expected to handle all contact types across all channels. That frustrates the customer and ends up in a very, very frustrating customer journey. So while we are really looking and focusing on making sure that we can make most of our services as self-service as possible, we are still very invested in making sure that we are investing in training people so that they can deliver exceptional customer service no matter which platform we put them on.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm gonna throw some general questions out there, so I can see all of you. So just feel free to pop up your hand if you'd like to take the question, and or if a couple of you would. I'm gonna preempt this question with a little story. Is that last year during the height of the pandemic, I was speaking to a head of department at a bank, and I was trying to organize a meeting with them. They said, "I'm sorry, I can't do meetings now. It's the bank's policy not to meet one-to-one." I said, "But your branches are open." They said, "Yeah, we're open for customers." So I said, "So it's okay to take money, but it's not okay to give money. What signal are you sending the marketplace?" And he actually said, "Oh, we've never thought about it like that." And so they actually ended up within about 3 weeks, I won't say it's because of me, ended up opening their branches and had some sort of, system where they could be COVID compliant to allow people in. And I found it fascinating because this leads into my question. In all of this new world, what are the biggest problems that we're likely to face, and what are our biggest blind spots? So folks, I'm just going to give everybody a goal there. And Mumbi, you are up first, and then Sean second. So Mumbi.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that has come to the fore for me has been what I define as client understanding. I mean, we call it research, we call it feedback, we can call it whatever we want, but I call it client understanding because that's at the core of what we're trying to do. In our organization specifically, there's been a lot of research done, but from different contexts, and with bringing in the client centricity, what kind of research do we need? And that's why I call it client understanding, because I think just reflecting on that story you've just told is that often we design experiences based on, even when we're looking at it from a client experience perspective, we design it on what we think we know. We've just spoken around hyper-personalization and the fact that customer expectations are shifting. They've shifted with COVID, but they're also shifting as people learn and engage with the different mediums that they're engaging with and the different environment that they find themselves in. So I think the challenge we have is getting to that hyper-personalization aspect, and how do we use our information and data and keep our hands on our fingers on the pulse in terms of understanding our clients. So I think from my perspective, we have to be able to find ways of asking the question. And I think in a B2B world especially, we find it difficult to ask the questions we would ask. If I'm dealing with you, Mike, on anything, I will not just assume what you want. I will actually ask you, how would you like your coffee? Would you like some sugar in it? Would you like some cream in it? But when we deal with business, we just assume we know what our clients want. So I think a big challenge will be, how do we continuously ask the questions that seem obvious, to our clients, and then maintain flexibility as a business to be able to provide for it? Because the other side of the coin is that you don't want to ask questions because you're not going to be able to meet the expectation. And as a business, you have to think about that. So, and like Louise, who doesn't have legacy systems, for most of us, we do. So it's about how we build in flexibility in our businesses not just from a technology perspective, but also from a person-to-person perspective. As we introduce new experiences in our business, one of the things I say is that we don't have to wait for the technology. You can implement a change in experience before the technology catches up, and you wait for the technology to catch up, which then just becomes a change in how you do it. But the experience has already been delivered to your client. So we need to build in that flexibility into our business. And the second piece is that we have to find ways to continuously ask what we think is obvious as client expectations shift.
Wonderful answer. Yes, very good. The experience comes first, and I think that's perfect. Sean, you had a comment there?
I did, and I'm going to go back to a comment that was made earlier around this, because my solemn belief, as you know, and I think we can all probably be aligned on this as customer experience leaders, is that 80% of the work that we do is around shifting culture and mindset within our organizations. We can spend as much time as we like tightening screws on processes, but if you don't have the Formula One driver in the Formula One car, all you're looking for is a train wreck. So the big piece of from a challenge perspective in terms of how we face the next few years is around bringing the organizational culture along to the point where the COVID impact has shifted the technology element in terms of the customer experience space. So our entire businesses were moved in a 12-month basis, some much quicker, some slower, but we spent an incredible amount of money on our systems. We spent an incredible amount of money in that age-old battle between profit and cost centers, and we made sure that we never cut off our revenue taps. Where we didn't spend enough money in the last 12 to 18 months is on our people. And it was a couple of comments have been made to this around, have we equipped our teams with the ability to make decisions? Have we given people the mandate working from home to take decisions without having to run to somebody else to get some documents signed? Have we expanded the culture of ownership within the overall business to be able to make a decision for a customer without pushing that person into that fear status of the repercussions if the decision that I make is wrong? And a huge part of my drive within the business is around ensuring that people understand that there is nothing wrong with making a mistake. There's a hell of a lot wrong with being negligent. But if you make a mistake and you've made that mistake in aid of trying to help a customer, of trying to do stuff right, that's more of a learning that we should take reaction and make the system better. The culture that we're having to fight backwards now in over the last 18 months is, for me, the biggest risk that is not on any risk landscape around the world at the moment.
Absolutely, Shauna. And, I think in talking to leaders around the world, which I do every single week, I think there's a lot of thinking about it. It's the people are aware of it, but they don't know what to do, and they're not taking action. And, I'm a great believer in don't sit on the fence for too long. Take some action and work it out along the way. It's a funny thing. We all went to school and we all tried to get A's for our assignments, 80% or more. Yet in business, if you get it right 51% of the time, you're generally incredibly successful. So, just do something. I want to move to a really, I like topics that push the social norm and that, people go, oh gosh, did he actually say that? Well, this is going to be one of those topics. I think it was Brenda, you said before we're talking about, interacting with your customers and social media and everything like that. And it made me think, and this is probably not so much for the corporations on the call, but can be, but more for the SMEs and the entrepreneurs that are listening in. A lot of you have your database and lists and they sit in social medias. And, people like Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey, they're under extreme pressure at the moment. I mean, Donald Trump wants to sue them. He wants to see them out of business. And if he succeeds, which he probably won't, but he's certainly, Facebook's share price has been all over the place recently. And a lot of people are leaving Facebook. Your customers are leaving Facebook by the droves. It's happening today. People are going off. I mean, I can see it on my friends list. I don't think I've annoyed them that much to see that my 5,000 friends is losing about, 50 a week. So, if we rely on this social media aspect, are we setting ourselves up for failure? Or what do we do? And this is a question for all of you. Or what do we do in order to manage expectations of our stakeholders that sit up here whilst trying to interact with our customers in ways in which they want to interact? Brenda.
I'm glad you brought that one up, Mike, because that's quite controversial. For me, my team knows. My team knows quite well that I hate any interaction that we end up getting through Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, because that is usually the sign of a really frustrated customer who has either not been able to receive any resolution through my email service, through my telephone service, and has opted to go into social media because there's a lot of following and people are going to latch on to that post and businesses want to jump on to save the situation. So for me, I would love nothing more than to move away from a space where we rely on social media to engage with customers. For me, in an ideal world, I'd like to see us using social media as an educational platform, not to be dealing with actual customer queries, because those types are actually the irate customer who's really agitated and is looking for some form of instant gratification. If I use our speech analytics tools, I find that the frequently used words are frustrated, angry, tired of waiting, because people are just generally going to gravitate towards a platform where they feel like they need help. So I'm more along the lines of the more people drop off social media, I don't hate that idea, but I would like to think that I would be in a position where I would be able to put hand on heart and say the customer experience and the customer journey that I'm able to offer through telephone and email and web chat is sufficient enough to just keep my customers wanting to look at the great garments that we put up on social media, as opposed to actually complain about the service we're delivering.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. I think very true too. Savvy, you had your hand up, and then Mumbi.
I just wanted to add here, it's kind of inevitable where social media and the internet is taking us these days. Going forward, I don't think it's going to go down in terms of the adaptation to social media when it comes to, the newer generations coming in play. Although I feel that, it's a nuisance to a lot of businesses right now. I think there's a huge potential in the future to turn these interactions into something positive. And that's something that, as a company, Freshworks is also trying to do, wherein, you provide a seamless, a singular experience throughout the various channels, whether it's social media, WhatsApp. I think yesterday there was a session where I think Vivek was the person who presented about WhatsApp being a new channel where customers prefer to do business online. So just adding that, customers can try to, do business through various channels. It's our job to sort of provide that, singular solution and singular experience in terms of the customer experience and how the customer feels about the way they're interacting with you. So, Freshworks as a company is already working on that. And, we have some things, we have like tickets coming into Fresh Desk, which is the customer service desk, through online portals, whereas like Instagram or Facebook, etc. So as an agent, you get that, singular experience where, you're interacting with customer through the desk itself, and it goes and gets posted online to the customer within minutes. So it's about providing that seamless, solution to the customer as well as the internal customer. So that's my point of view here.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Savvy. Mumbi, I'll come to you in a second. It's interesting. I was talking to my funnels guy, who is one of the best in the world, actually, and is based in Florida a few months ago. And he was I said to him, what's selling online at the moment and what social medias are working? And he said, primarily, TikTok is making the most money for people out of all social medias online. And I went, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I asked him why, and he told me. So it seems that people are moving from one to one. So, I wanted to throw this back at you, Savvy, before I go to Mumbi. Is years ago, used to go to a shop and people would say, have you got a loyalty card? And we'd just say, we're not that loyal because carrying 30 cards around with you just doesn't work. So these days, that's much more integrated. I think one of the opportunities for the future is if somebody can build an interface where all social medias are in there, and when you get comments or likes or whatever, whether it's on Facebook, TikTok, this, that, and the other, it's all in a central point in your organization and you can feed back out. That way you can manage the trends of social media, because Facebook may not be around in 5 years' time and we may have something we never even heard of that we're talking about. Okay, then we had Sean, and then it was Douglas.
I'll just quickly go here, Mike. So I agree completely with what you said. People are moving towards various platforms, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, etc., and many more might come up in the future. It's a very sort of volatile and fast-moving world where we're living in. And at the same time, you want to give that singular experience to the customer. So what we have done at Freshworks is that we collect these sort of comments or instances where someone wants to reach out to you through the various channels, and we, as I mentioned, provide it to a customer desk where the agents can in a seamless and sort of systemized manner respond to those, as we call them, tickets when they come into our system. So in that way, we are sort of providing a singular experience to the customers of the customers, basically. So and then also at the same time, our agents are not overloaded with trying to go to Facebook to respond to a certain customer, or the customers are themselves not as pissed off and waiting for a longer time on the various platforms, and we're not able to manage all of that. So that's basically the
well
point.
done. And there you go. I told you Savvy was savvy. So Sean, over to you.
I think before me, it was Mumbi who had her hand up. So,
yeah,
Mumbi,
thanks,
I haven't
Sean.
come to you.
No, thanks, Sean. Yeah, I think Savi has answered. Maybe that's why Mike moved on, because I think that I'm going to sound like a broken record talking about flexibility of how we design our businesses, and because you have to meet your client where they are. And platforms are going to change. I don't think digital is going to go away at all. But the form and the platform that you're using today may not be the same platform next year when another system comes up, when another platform comes up and takes over from Facebook. Facebook itself, or Meta, should we say, is going to look different in the future. So I think the companies that are going to win are those who are able. Firstly, I think the aggregation companies like Freshdesk are going to be doing very well. But also as a business, I think the companies that are going to be looking at how they build flexibility into to be able to connect to different client platforms, and how they interact with clients, and being able to shift from one platform to the next, and then creating that ease for the employees who have to deal with that complexity. I think those are the companies that are going to see the future get easier as opposed to more complex.
Very good statement. Sean.
So perhaps a slightly divergent viewpoint on social media here. The old adage, if you're not in the room, you're not hearing the conversations about you, is one that we're all trying to solve with social media, and we're trying to be on every platform and be responsive within milliseconds of the comment hitting, and the way that we respond must generate likes, and we've got to get the right rating in the different app stores, or else it's become a business driver. And in many instances, when you look out there, businesses end up chasing their tails around the social media rooms. And for me, and certainly the way that I believe a business should approach this, is that you should be taking those channels that are relevant to your customers and focusing on them. If it's Facebook, stay on Facebook. If you're not dealing in the B2B world, stay off LinkedIn. If you're in that social space, be in the social space, but you can't be everywhere, or else you're going to have 1,000 people behind the screen all waiting for somebody to comment. I think we can all quite happily say, R&B shouldn't be on TikTok. I don't, there's just not the alignment there. So don't worry about it. But at the end of the day, we end up with, there's hundreds and thousands of consultants out there saying, social media this and social media that. And if you're not on social media, your business is going to end in 5 seconds. Choose what's right and do it right in that channel, and you're going to be fine. You might miss a little bit here and there, but if your customers know that you're responsive there, they'll go there.
Sean, that's fantastic. Just before I go to Douglas, I'm interested, but you don't have to say it, who you think what bank should be on TikTok. But anyway, back to Douglas.
That's a nasty one, Mark. I don't think you should be asking big banks that question. But anyways, Sean, for a second, I thought you were working for Infobit, man. I think spot on. And Savvy has touched on it. Mumbi has touched on it. See social media for what it is. It's just a mechanism to keep your ear on the ground, right? And you're 100% right. If your customers are there, then you should be there, right? And Savvy has said this as well. I've got good news for SMEs out there, right? These big corporations that have spent millions and millions of dollars, advertising and building their brand, they're not the only ones out there. There are far more choices out there for you to go and engage your customers, build your customer databases, and do normal communications with your customers. It's not just the big boys that are out there. And you'll find, and everybody has said this already, Facebook is not always going to be around. These channels come and go. We have seen this. We are right in the middle of that battle every single day of our lives. We play the aggregator space. So we've seen it. And the way things are going with economies of scale as well is that all of us, and I put myself and Freshworks in that stable as well, we are building solutions not just for large corporations. We are looking at the whole spectrum. So we are building solutions that are cost effective for SMEs as well. So that's the good news I want to give to the smaller guys that are listening today as well, is that you've got just as much choice as consumers out there have got.
Fantastic. Great. Eloise, a quick comment, and then we're going to start to wrap things up.
So I think what really struck me about this interaction is about going back to that old school view is meet your customer where they're at, right? So that means you need to really understand that customer. Do the work that is really foundational in customer centricity. Really get to know your customer, invest in that. And that is where you're going to find your most value, because it is understanding them that you will then be able to know where it is best to connect with them, where they are going to have expectations of immediate response, or they are there just to engage and enjoy making your brand part of their life. And I think that for all of us, we need to keep that true north. Ultimately, everything's an enabler. But as customer experience practitioners, we must remember to do those continuous basics and keep working at that. And then the rest will follow.
Folks, thank you so much, Eloisa. We've been talking about the new world of digital customer experience today. We're coming to the end of our session, but I just want to ask each of our panelists today for your 1-sentence tip for everybody here. In other words, to bring everything to a close, what's your 1-sentence tip for the future of how to provide amazing customer experience from a digital perspective? Let's go to you, Douglas.
Thanks for that, Mark, and thanks for being on this panel this afternoon. I absolutely enjoyed it. My single tip is keep the balance. Keep the balance between having human interaction and applying or deploying some digital channels. And we've heard this before. Keep close to your customers. Listen to them. Don't just go for everything. At the first point, keep the balance.
Fantastic. Brenda, for you?
For me, I would say keep it simple while being effective. At the end of the day, we are all just here trying to become the most valuable voice of the customer.
Thank you so much. Sean?
If you're going to build something, make sure it works.
I love that. It's fantastic. Mumbi, what about you?
Keep connected. Human beings are, we're not rational. We're actually emotional beings, and then we put the rationality on it. And that is irrespective of whether you're in B2C or B2B world. So keep connected, ask the questions, don't assume that you know what your client wants, and then build for flexibility. I think the changing world is going to continue changing. So building the flexibility into your business and allow yourself to keep connected.
Beautiful. Savvy?
So basically, my point of view is just, as a business, you should try to own the customer journey. And as also Mumbi mentioned, try to stay agile and, aware of what's happening in the environment. As long as you can do that, whether you're an upcoming business or you're a traditional business, an online business, you can sort of focus on the right thing at hand at that point of time, and win wherever you want to go. So that's my point of view. And thanks for having me on the panel, guys. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Eloise?
I think my perspective is really to empower your people to be customer-centric. Your solutions, your next big thing are going to come from your people. As long as they understand what your mission is and how you want to do it, your people will come and they will deliver and they will be your magic formula. So keep that true north and drive that customer-centric culture.
Beautiful. My tip, folks, is to look backwards as you are looking forward. I mean, I know that we lose customers, everybody loses customers, but unfortunately we look at big data and say, oh, we've lost 7% of our customers, that's acceptable. But in fact, why did they really leave? And I remember when I was involved in the financial services company many years ago, and when we actually started interviewing customers about why they were not renewing, we realized it wasn't because they were going to competitors, because they decided to spend their money on short-term gratification, i.e. travel, updating their house instead of saving for their retirement. So Pooja says here, has Mike considered that the restaurants actually trying to attract a new target market and he might not fall in their target market category? I did actually think about that. And so it's fascinating though, because we went to another restaurant just recently. They had a QR code as well. So we ordered off it. And then somebody came out and said, sorry, our QR code goes to the wrong menu. Here's menus, and gave us live menus. So don't try and be too smart, folks. That's my tip here. It's just keep it simple. And that's the way we'll always serve customers. It's been an absolute pleasure to have each and every one of you on the panel today. And I think you've given everybody fantastic tips and a really good insights into your world of expertise. Pooja, all back to you. There you go.
Thank you so much, Mike. That question was not from me. I didn't know. That question was from a gentleman, David. He had a comment for you. But then thank you so much. It was indeed a great session. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Savvy, Sean, Eloise, Mumbi, Brenda, Doug. Thank you so much for your time. We'll keep in touch for our future events for sure. And I hope to see everyone at our live event in August.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.